Okay, good morning. We're going to try this again. We are doing turn 10 right now. There is only one set of pass-through fire that I've seen doing the rules, so let's go ahead and do this move. So Heavy Foot is charging the arquebuses. At the same time, these guys are providing pass-through fire, so I'll move them half a move, and the charge must have a chance of connecting. Heavy Foot charge movement is 12 inches. So first we'll see if that can actually be accomplished. I think so, but let's take a look. So if they do kind of wheeling movement, they do have a pretty good chance of doing this. That's about 10 right now. So I think the ruling is going to be that yes, they will be able to do that. So let's get some of these markers out of the way temporarily, so we don't get them interfering here. So the arquebuses on that side, actually, they have to reload. Let's see what their orders were. Just a moment. Let's see. Eastern skirmishers and arquebuses fire on the armored foot. So these guys can't fire. They're actually reloading desperately and will not be able to fire. These guys can. We know it's going to do 2 and 2 for the pass-through fire. So I'm going to go ahead and just subtract off 1, 2, 3, 4. This takes this unit down to 10, 20, 32 of, well, basically they're at 64%. And they've just made a check. I don't think they check again. Let's see when they check. Hang on a second. So they check at, I really should have this page dog-eared or something. Here it is. So Heavy Foot make a check at 33 1/3, which we did one already. And then it says, when casualties exceed certain percentage, morale must be checked. If loss brought below a set of percentage by missile fire, unit must check before the melee portion. If the loss brought about by melee, must check after melees have completed. If the unit remains stable, it need not check again until such time as it suffers losses to the stated percentage of the original strength. But at that time, it must be removed. So 33 1/3 means that they would check again when they're down 66.6%, which these guys are not. They're at 64% strength. They are not going to check again just based on that. Okay, so that was pass-through missile fire. There is no more pass-through missile fire that I've seen at all on the board, so I can feel free to move everything at this point. So let's get these guys charged around. This is going to be more of a wheel than anything else. So 1, 2, 3, 4, come on, 5, 6, they take their missile fire, and then yes, they complete their charge here. Okay. So that's the Heavy Foot. Let's take a look at the orders for the rest of Red's turn, and then I'll do the movement for the blue team. So Heavy Foot is going to charge the arquebuses. We did that. Heavy Horse is going to move oblique northeast to be able to support charge anything attempting to flank charge the Heavy Foot next turn. So they're setting up to do a charge if charged by moving oblique northeast. So I'm going to assume that move means the full movement. They're moving oblique northeast, which is kind of a wheel here. We've talked about that before. So let's see what we do here. Let's hold this stable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's only a, actually, wait a minute. Let's rethink this. Move oblique northeast. So, I'm sorry. Oblique is a facing maneuver that costs 1/4, which for horse is going to be 1/8 of their movement. So that's going to be 1.5 of their movement, leaving them 9.5 left. So we're just going to turn these guys. We're going to move these guys on the oblique, I think. So 9.5. So, and 45 degrees. So somewhere about here. All right. Because they'll be able to wheel during a charge as well. So that's what I'm going to do with those guys. Yeah, all right. Heavy horse, oblique northeast. Okay, cannons, move back south, southwest. Again, not reloading, so we're going to leave the markers here. So south, southwest is going to be about 15 degrees here. This would be an oblique as well. Let's double check that oblique move. I'm downing myself as usual first thing in the morning. The oblique quarter move. So a quarter off of 6. 6 divided by 4 is what, 1.5? So 1.5 of their 6 inches gone, leaving them 4.5 inches left. To do this, actually they can't do that because they're facing to the front. They must really do, it's not a left or right face. I'm going to say it's more of, I guess it's a left face combined with a oblique face to get them to move. So like 3/4 of their move is gone out of 6, which would be what? That would leave them 1.5. So they can move south, southwest 1.5, and I'll change the facing in a moment. But for now, kind of 22.5 degrees this way, so 1.5. And even with these guys. And we'll change the crew position to indicate that they're going that way now. And the position of the fatigue marker, which will get updated later in the fatigue phase. Okay. Moving on now to their armored foot, move obliquely northwest to cover the cannons as they reload. So oblique northwest, so oblique is 1/4 of their movement. They move 6, so that's going to take, and they're heavy troops. No, that doesn't matter. So it's only poorly trained troops. So and dismounted knights are definitely not poorly trained. So 1/4 of their move is gone there. So that's 1.5. Leaving them 4.5 left. And this is truly an oblique, so it's easier to measure from this corner here. So 4.5 puts them, I'm sorry I'm speaking softly, the rest of the family is not quite up yet. There's cannon over here. And line things up a little bit. And put these guys on the oblique here so I know they're on the oblique. Okay, so they've moved. These guys have moved. These guys have moved. And the cannons have moved. Arquebuses, reload and or fire at will, right? So these guys did not get a chance to fire, so they can fire their 2 during the missile segment. The other arquebuses are reloading, so I remove the marker for reload. Coming around the horn now, let's do the movement for Team Blue. All right, coming around. How are we doing? Recording still on? Yes, 9 minutes. Wow, I wasted a lot of time there. Okay, Eastern skirmishers and arquebuses fire on the heavy foot. They both, well, these guys fired, these guys were reloading. So those guys have done their pass-through fire, and because they're in melee now, they will not be able to fire again. So they just sit there. Okay, heavy crossbow, charge enemy arquebuses with a battle cry. So even though these guys are reloaded, they are charging forward, which the interesting thing is there will be more pass-through fire because pass-through fire takes place at the midpoint of their movement. Their movement is going to be like this. We know it's going to be close range anyway. So those two arquebuses get to fire now. They fire doing, well, that's a 5 and a 6. They fire doing a 5 and a 6. Where is gunpowder weapons? Here it is. As long as they didn't get a 1, they were going to kill. So they've killed 2 heavy crossbowmen, so we're back where we were, essentially. I'm going to just take them from the end and scoop things over here. We'll tidy it up later. So either way you shake it, those guys have suffered 2 casualties. Oh yeah, for those viewing at home, we had to retcon the fire the last time. So these arquebuses are here. These guys did a battle cry and got shot, and now they're in contact. I mean, technically it filled in from the back, yada yada. Okay, moving on. Heavy foot advances half a move, up to 1 inch from the heavy crossbows. Whichever is less, so as to be able to be drawn into melee. So they are definitely going to be able to do that. The movement, they can move, they're at 4 to totally connect up. They can move 3, and they will be within 1 inch. Let's get these guys out of the way temporarily. So they can be potentially drawn into the melee. We'll see how that functions later. I'm sure we're going to have to pause the camera so that I can actually go to work this morning. Okay. Center skirmishers charge the arquebuses to the south. It says southeast. Technically there are arquebuses to the southeast. I think it's more than 50-50 that these guys are going to charge those arquebuses because that's what the commander's intent obviously was. So the only way I'm going to, if I roll 1, these guys are going to go that way, to the southeast. If I roll anything else, they're going to charge that way. It is a 3. They're going to do what is sensible here, and they're going to charge across there. They have 12 inches of movement, which they will easily make contact here within 9, even without the charge move. So they can move in any direction as we established before. So we're just going to move them up here temporarily, and we'll do the wraparound during the melee phase. But the interesting thing here is that masks the heavy cannon on the right, and both cannons have orders to fire. So the question, plus this guy is masked by the arquebuses. So the question in my mind is going to be whether this cannon will fire at all. Okay. Armored foot advance 6 or as far as possible. Armored foot advance 6 or as far as possible. They can advance 6. Again, this could factor in. If this guy fires and he ends up veering this way, this could be a disaster for, we're going to see some fratricide. All right, let's see. East cannon fire on heavy horse, west cannon fire on armored foot long. Heavy horse 1, advance 1, move south. Heavy horse 2, wheel around to the east side of the farm. To the east side. Again, they're thinking in the wrong direction. It's okay. These guys clearly know what's going on. I'm not even going to roll for that. So, advance 1, move south, wheel around, follow. So these guys move 12. Pretty straightforward here. We're going to just hold this about there. Fix this in a moment. Fix all this in a moment. All right, that's 12. Farm field. Everything moved. Everything moved around. All right. Ah, I hate this fiddly stuff with the blocks. Sometimes miniatures would be so much better, but I don't have that many. All right. These guys are doing a wheel move, so let's advance them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.5. 6.5. 7.5. 8.5. 9.5. 10.5. 11.5. 12. So that's where they are in the grand scheme of things. Okay. East Cannon, fire on heavy horse. They did not give me any orders for whether they're shooting long or short. They're probably an experienced set of cannoneers. Okay, missile phase. Wait a minute. Before we move on to that, we need to do missile phase. So was there anything else during the missile phase? No, because they charged. No, because they're in contact. No, because these guys are in melee now. Yeah, no more missile. Okay, so we are going to fire this. These guys are, this is the light cannon. It uses this. Those guys were moving. And in this case, it looks like whether you call them black or white, either way, bad stuff is going to happen to those guys. But the bad stuff is very limited if white is called. So white is short, as we know. He saw them moving toward, I think it's 50-50. I gotta go with 50-50 without any orders. I'm gonna say shooting straight ahead because he doesn't want to, he sees these armored foot all moving to his right. So the same thing with the heavy foot here to the left. So he's got to aim pretty much straight up the middle here. And he's got to decide whether he's going to shoot short or long. Odds, short, evens, long. Odds, white, evens, black. Evens, black. He's firing black, and now let's see whether he veers right or left. So this is the roll for left or right. So it's going to be black. He rolls a 4, which is straight on, which makes this very easy, thankfully, for me. I just hold these, drop this, put it in the middle, and my goodness, it straddles those blocks. It's going to wipe out six of these horse. That's as close as I can get it to being dead on. Let's take a picture here for kind of posterity. It laid right across the middle of those horses. So 6 heavy horse are wiped out. 6 out of 3, 6, 9, 12, 14, 15, 18. 6 out of 18 is a third. Let's see if those guys need to test. Boy, lots of stuff going on. So, come back to the rules. How are we doing? Our voice memo is still working good. Back to the rules. Heavy horse, 50%. So, they're not at 50%. They took it like a champ, and they will continue on. Now, these cannon, their shot is completely masked. I think it's, plus their shot is masked by friendly troops. So I think, unless I roll a 1, this cannon's not going to fire. Okay? So, let's put the marker here. All right. A 4. That cannon is not going to fire this turn. Sorry. They're just not going to do that. All right. This cannon is a direct fire weapon, and they can't even see where they're laying on the gun at this point. All right, that's it for orders. Let's double check the orders here. So, Eastern Skirmishers, Arquebuses, Heavy Crossbow, Heavy Foot, Center Skirmishers, Armored Foot, East Cannon, West Cannon, Heavy Horse, Heavy Horse, Heavy Foot, Heavy Horse, Cannons, Armored Foot, Arquebuses. Reload. So these guys, yeah, I've removed all the markers. Those guys did fire. And these guys, okay, I think we're good here. And I need to move these markers closer just to keep them honest. Okay. We're done with the artillery segment. Now we're moving on to the melee segment. And I am out of time. I have to get ready for work. So bear with me. I'm going to pause the video at this point. Okay, it is much later in the day. We are continuing turn 10 with the 3 different melees that we're going to have. So these skirmishers versus these arquebuses, which are now reloaded. These heavy crossbowmen, which are reloaded, versus these arquebuses, which fired during the pass-through phase. And then finally, these heavy foot versus these arquebuses. Now, the interesting thing is these heavy footmen have an order to engage in melee if they're drawn in. But I think that was given to them in anticipation that these heavy foot were going to back up these 2 arquebuses, but what in fact happened was the charge occurred over here. So, I don't know. Should I allow these guys to be drawn into that? We'll deal with that in a second. So, one of the things we'll also deal with is the fact that during the melee phase, so I did not immediately wrap these guys around, because if you turn to look at the miscellaneous melee information on page 16, you'll see that first, missiles can't be fired in melee, so skirmishers across the river didn't get their shot during the missile segment. All troops, the infiltration rule doesn't seem to matter, but maybe it does when it comes to wrapping around. Don't think it's going to apply in this case, right? Units within 3 inches of melee may be drawn in if the player to whom they belong so desires cannot have been moved over 1/2, which was the reason why those heavy foot on the blue team side, on this side of the table, were not told to move more than half, so they would be available to join a melee. And then after the first round of melee, excess troops from the flanks or rear may be moved. So in this case, these guys charged up, and that's going to allow some of these troops in the back, and it depends on measurement, right? If movement at 1/2 normal will allow, so 1/2 of their move is going to be 12 inches. So up to 12 inches away potentially could wrap around here onto the flank and over, but that's after the first round of melee. So let's start this party over here on this side. Now with charges, you don't get a morale check unless it's cavalry, but impetus bonus. So heavy foot, armored foot, and all horse units receive impetus bonus. Such troops add an extra die. So are any of these the charge? These guys are not heavy. See, they're green, so they're light troops. And then these blue ones are skirmishers. They're light troops as well. So no impetus bonus from a charge for these guys. So I think it's going to be a straight up fight here for round 1. So let's get some combat matrix stuff going. So light foot versus light foot over here. I'm going to say these first 2 guys are in contact. 1 die per man, 6 kills. So 1 die per man. We're going to look at the blue team. Blue team has 2 men in contact. 6 kills. They get 2 5s. That is not a kill. Now looking at it from the other side of the table, red side of the table, again, 2 people in contact during this first round of melee. No kills either. So 0 kills. Let's do a quick post-melee morale. One of the things we're experimenting with this time is a reinterpretation of what post-melee morale rule number 3 means. So let's flip over here. So both sides make the totals, right? So let's look, side with fewer casualties determines spot. Both sides had 0 casualties, so nothing, because 0 times a dice roll is going to be 0. Side with greater number of surviving troops, which were involved in the melee. That's 2 versus 2, no greater number, so 0 and 0. Each side now multiplies their surviving figures, which is 2, separated by type, more than one type, is by the morale ranking. So Lightfoot, it's going to be equal in this case, right? And then we're going to take the totals and we're going to multiply this by 2, which in this case is 0, it doesn't matter. We're multiplying by 2 because there are less than 20 figures. So in second edition, the example that was given had one combatant had less than 20 figures and the other didn't. And in that case, there was no multiplication. But in third edition, that gets flipped around. So even though one of the example types of troops in the third edition had less than 20 figures, it meant that the multiplication happened. So if either of them are less than 20 figures in contact, we're going to multiply. But in this case, 0 to 19, melee continues. Okay, so now it's going to be second round for these guys, because I'm assuming he didn't want, well, he could not be drawn into this melee. So let's see how this changes things. Okay, so up to 12 away, or up to 6 rather, up to 6 away can be moved into contact. Let's read the rule again. Let's make sure we got this correct. After the first round of melee, excess troops, figures unopposed by an enemy directly before them, from the flanks or rear ranks, may be moved so as to overlap the enemy formation's flanks and even rear, if movement at 1/2 normal will allow. 1/2 normal is 6 for these skirmishers. So everything up through this figure, we're just going to move this out of the way. These guys can lap around. So I'm going to say this guy can hit the flanks. This guy, and maybe I'm doing this wrong. This guy can move in here. I don't think he can make it all the way around. I don't think he can make it all the way around the horn. No, I think looking at it realistically, these guys would bump down and fill in. That actually works out pretty well. Okay. And then these guys can't be drawn into the melee. They're too far away. They're skirmishers, though. I don't think breaking the unit cohesion matters, and I don't think there are rules about that. Again, we're encountering edge cases. Okay, second round of melee, 1 dice per man, 6 kills. So these guys have 7 dice to roll. So they're attacked at the flank and rear now. Flank attack. Units attack from the flank or the next higher class. Units attacking from the flank or the next higher class. A rear attack. Enemies which attack from the rear deliver casualties without receiving any in return. All right. The 2 in the front here. And the 2 in the rear. Right? Because the advantage of the rear, deliver casualties without receiving, oh, they get the bonus stated above. Okay. So this is just for the 2 in front. Blue 2 in front. No casualties. Now we're going to bump up the remainder, 2, 4, 5, up to the next heaviest, which is going to be heavy foot. We come up to heavy foot versus light foot. 1 die per man, 5 or 6 kills. So 2, 4, 5. If I get a 5 or a 6, that's a kill. We got 1 kill. The question is, which one is it? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter right now. All right. Attack's going back the other way. So this guy can attack on the flank. Let's see if he attacks that. 5. Does not do any damage because he needs a 6. Now these 2 attacking the guys in front of them. No kills. Okay. So we've got 1 kill. Oh yeah, we wanted to do prisoners as well. super complicated, guys. Super complicated this time. So prisoners. Were those guys taken prisoners? The winner in this case was foot. The loser was foot. Number rolled on the winner's die. The loser's die is not used. So how many prisoners were taken? 4. So actually those two guys, these two guys are taken prisoner instead of moving back in good order. So we won't have to deal with the whole retreat and bumping into the armored foot, none of that stuff. These guys are taken prisoner, moving these guys out of the way. Okay, recording again. Because we had a prisoner, 2 prisoners, we have to remove a block to escort those prisoners off the board. Yeah, it just occurs to me that there was something else I didn't take into account here, and that was the effect of this guy on the combat. Heroes. Now, in most cases, a hero would not affect a distant unit, but in this case, I think we need to look at the Army Commander rule, because he is within range to affect that combat. Army Commander. If the figure representing the Army Commander is with a body of troops, that unit will add a +1. Any unit within 12 inches will also receive a bonus of 1 to the score of any dice or die roll it must make. Shoot. So those 3 rolls, which I cleared off the board, gosh darn it, I don't want to do this entire combat over. However, I do want them to potentially receive the benefit. I must go back and review the tape. Hang on. I did see the rolls, so let me review the tape. Okay, so I went back and reviewed the rolls that were made by the arquebus on the red side, and the first roll for this guy attacking this guy on his flank was actually a 5, which would have got bumped to 6, and in this case, it would have increased the number of casualties by 1. Which would have changed some of the other calculations. So let's bring this back on the board. Let's bring these guys back on the board so I can kind of redo this calculation for round 2 of the melee. Now, we had, yep, I got another death in here. Let's put these back the way they were. Let's put this back the way it was. I'm almost tempted to just rerun it because it's going to be just as confusing to reset this up. Okay. So these guys inflicted a casualty, right? And then this guy inflicted a casualty. So instead of having the previous calculation, we can forget all about that. We're going back and redoing the entire calculation for round 2. So in this case, the side with the fewer casualties, positive, so 0 for step 1. For step 2, greater number of surviving troops, which were involved in the melee, positive difference between the number of his troops and those of the enemy. Side with a greater number of surviving troops. So this guy was involved in the combat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minus 2 is going to be 4. So 4 for step 2 goes to the blue side. Each side now multiplies surviving figures, which in this case is 2 times 4 is going to be 8. So 8 points over here on this side. And then, as before, 2 of these are treated as Lightfoot, and 1, 2, 3, 4 of these are going to be treated as Heavyfoot. So 4 times 5 is 20, plus 8. That's going to be 28 points, plus 4. That's going to be 32 minus 8 is going to be 32 minus 8. I should know this, but I'm having trouble at this point in the day. 32 minus 8 is going to be 24. So blue wins this by 24, but it's doubled, so it's 48. Back one move in good order, same as before, except these two guys are taken prisoner. So in this case, very little change. Wow, that was a lot. I hope you kept up with it. So to recap, blue over here lost one casualty and had to give up one block to guard prisoners. Green arquebuses gave up 2 prisoners and had 1 casualty. Okay. And after 2 rounds of melee, we'll deal with fatigue in a moment, but after 2 rounds of melee, that's wrapped up. Okay, and they seem to have broken off from contact with each other, just due to how the block removal has functioned. I think we're going to do some minor adjustment here to neaten this up. And these guys, not that facing matters much for skirmishers, but these guys are facing the flank of these arquebuses, which are now reloaded, but facing to the north. Okay. All right, here we go. We've restarted my second audio device. Wow, that was a lot. Okay. So these heavy crossbowmen charged, but we've already said because they're light, they get no impetus bonus. So it's going to be Lightfoot versus Lightfoot, 2 versus 2. Very straightforward. So red side rolls 1 kill. Blue side rolls no kills. So 1 kill, temporarily out of the block here. Let's do the post-melee morale calculation here. So side with the fewer casualties determines positive difference between their losses. Now here's where it gets interesting. The entire rank here was potentially in combat. Number of ranks fighting 1. But they only had blocks in front of each other. So again, we're kind of making this up as we go along. I think I'm only going to count the figures that were actually in contact. So the side with the fewer casualties determines positive difference between their losses and those suffered by the enemy. So 1. 1 for red, multiplied by a dice roll. 3. So red at this point has 3 points for step 1. For step 2, greater number of surviving troops. In this case, it goes to red again because they have 2 surviving of the troops that were in contact. They have more surviving troops. So the positive difference here is 1. They've got 1 more for step 2. Step 3, multiply surviving figures by type. So Lightfoot, 2 times 4 is going to be 8. So we're going to give, for step 3, we're going to give red 8 points more. And for blue, we're going to give them, they've got 1 block left, they get 4 points. 4 points. Both sides now total the scores and subtract out. So these dice cancel out. Red is going to win this combat by 8 points, which gets doubled to 16. Difference of 16. Melee continues. So after round 1, we are allowed to fill in the blocks. So filling in the blocks here, we're just going to bump this guy forward. We're going to even this out. And again, it's still 2 versus 2 here in the front line. All right, so the 2 guys on the red side, they score another kill. Blue side, they score no kills. That's going to be exactly the same result. These arquebuses are tough mofos. All right, we're going to round 3 of melee. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. These heavy footmen, wait. God bless America. We can't do that. Forget everything I said about round 2, because we did not wrap these guys around. We should have filled in and wrapped around to the extent of the movement that they could make, which is pretty much their entire movement. So can these guys get surrounded? Yes, they can get surrounded. So these two are in contact. So if this makes any sense to anybody, these guys are completely surrounded at this point. Okay, but they still imposed a casualty, right? We did that much correct. And I'm going to say the two that were directly in front of them did not have the ability to impose a casualty. We need to bring one more block around. All right, that makes it more even Steven. Okay, so really it's just these two guys that we're dealing with. Okay, and we dealt with that. So they impose a casualty. The two in front got their roll. So now we're dealing with the flank attacks and rear attacks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, at heavy foot. So if a 5 or 6 gets rolled here, that's a casualty. 1, 2. 2 casualties, which solves all of my problems because it eliminates those arquebuses from the table. Okay, I'm going to pause the video here. Okay, let's go back to combat 1 here for a second. Instability due to excess casualties. This unit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That unit is down. I think they used to be 18. Yeah, so I think they need to make a roll due to instability due to excess casualties. They're light. That would be an 8 or better, but they're supported by their army commander. So they get to roll with a +1. They scored a 10. These arquebuses are staying again. Now, these skirmishers, 3, 4, 5, 10 of 12, 10 of 12, 10 of 12. Jesus. Why is this so hard for me to do math in the afternoon? Okay, so those skirmishers are at 83%. These heavy crossbowmen, they've given up. These heavy crossbowmen have taken 4 casualties in total. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So they would have been 18 to originate. They're down to 14. So 14 18ths. 14 18ths is 77%. So these guys do not yet have to make a check. They are in some kind of disorder. I would suggest reordering them prior to doing anything else. Probably going to be a formation change. Okay. Done. Done. Now, these guys did not have an opportunity to intervene in that. They were not needed because during round 2, those guys wrapped around. So there's a possibility I might allow them to be pulled into this battle over here. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so these arquebuses versus heavy foot. Neither side is fatigued at this point. Fatigue wasn't a factor over here either, thankfully. It's fairly straightforward. We've got 3, 6, 7, 8 in the front rank. So 8 versus 8. They were charged by heavy though. A charge move is permitted, and the impetus, heavy foot does get an impetus bonus. Such troops add an extra die to the normal number shown on the combat tables. What does that mean? Instead of 1 die per man, it's going to be 2 die per man. These guys are Lightfoot versus Heavy. Lightfoot versus Heavy, 1 die per 2 men, 6 kills. So it's actually half of this. It's only going to be 4 dice and 6 kills. They get nothing. Let's just see what the Heavyfoot does here. Heavyfoot versus Lightfoot, 1 die per man, 5 or 6 kills. So that's going to be 8 dice. We've got no... So this guy is a normal hero. So this guy is a hero. He's going to bump them up. These guys... Good grief. I'm glad I did not remove this. Because it turns out that this is their army commander. I'm going to say he's within 12. Yes, he is within 12. So actually, this would have been 2 casualties because these bump up to 6. So these guys imposed 2 casualties. Man, really wish you guys were here to help me work through this. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The shock of that many troops. I think the intent was during the charge round to double the dice. Tell me if you disagree, because it seems like it's weak sauce. If you're only adding 1 dice, then proportionally, if this was a small unit, that would have a much more proportional impact than if I universally bumped up the dice. That would scale better. I think that's the intent, right? Is that we bump this up. So instead of Heavyfoot versus Lightfoot being 1 die per man, 5 or 6 killing, it's going to be 2 dice per man with 5 or 6 killing. So this is going to be 2 dice per man. So I'm going to roll these twice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, I've got 8 dice. So I'm going to roll these twice. And remember, 5 or 6 kills, but in this case, they've got a hero with them. So hero, let's confirm that adds +1 to all their checks. Gosh, I really, really wish I had an assistant here. Heroes. Fighting ability of 4 figures. Heroes need never check morale. Add 1 to the die or dice of their unit. I'm going to add 1 across the board instead of treating him as being in the front rank and giving them 3 extra attacks. And I'm going to roll all these dice twice, like I said. 5 or 6 kills. Those are kills. So 4 kills. Doesn't matter if I add 1 to these, doesn't matter. So 4 kills. And 3 kills, and it doesn't matter if I had 1 to all those were all 2s. So 4 and 3, so that's 7 kills. So these guys inflicted 2 kills, and these guys inflicted 7. So let's take this down. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 kills. And these guys took 2 kills. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere. I read the instability due to excess casualties. That is done after melees are resolved, which in my mind means after all of the stupid post-morale calculations. So let's do the post-morale calculation. I'm going to pause the video and start again. The side with the fewer casualties, positive difference. So fewer casualties had 2. They had 7 casualties. Difference is 5 times the dice roll. But their dice roll gets a +1 because of the hero. So it's going to be 3 times 5. That gives these guys 15 points. So let's just call it 1 and a 5 to keep track of this. So step 2, side with greater number of surviving troops. So in this case, they had lost 7 out of the 8 that were in contact. So these guys had 8 survivors, oh, a -2. So these guys had 6 survivors in the front row. And the enemies had 1. So 6 minus 1, there were 5 difference. So that takes this guy up to 20. Let's call it 2-0, right? And that's up to 20 by step 2. Side 3, these guys were heavy foot, surviving figures. So again, these guys had 6 survivors of the 8 that were in contact. So 6 times 5 is 30, plus 20 takes them to 50, which makes the math so simple at this point. Thank goodness. This side, who is currently at 0, they had 1 survivor in the front rank, and that would have been 1 times 4. That would be 4. So 4 versus 50 is going to be a 46-point difference. Again, not 20 figures in contact, so I think we've got to multiply that. So 4 off of 50 is 46 times 2 is going to be 86, 92 difference, route 1.5 moves. So we are going to take prisoners. Prisoners, this is going to be, the winner was foot versus the loser foot. So the winner's die is the number rolled, and again, we're going to add 1 to it because of the hero. The winner's die, prisoner is going to be 2. So they also take 2 prisoners out of this. And before these guys route 1.5 moves, let's do the instability calculation now. So they're down 2, 4, 6, 7 alive. And I don't know what they originally had, but 7 alive. I think if we look at it, yeah, there's more in the dead and prisoner pile than are alive. They are going to have to make a roll. This guy is within range to influence that roll, so their army commander will influence that roll, and it will be necessary for them to roll at least a 7. They rolled an 8, plus 1 is 9, so they will route 1.5 moves, and it would just be the guy that was in contact that routes 1.5 moves. Okay, so let's get this. These guys are prisoners. These guys are dead. There would have been 1 guy from the front rank that ran off 1.5 moves, because we said we're only going to apply that to the people that were in contact. 1.5 moves would be 12 plus 6 is 18. So this dude from the front corner, I'm going to say, is going to be back here near the river, all by his lonesome. Okay, and that's it, aside from applying fatigue. Okay, so here we go with fatigue. So first of all, would these heavy footmen have been able to impose themselves into that melee? And the answer is no. Here's why. Because they have to be within 6 inches. I took a photograph from the top, but if you look at this, the edge of this movement tray and the edge of that movement tray is 4, and potentially the figures are 5 or 6. They're not close enough to have intervened in that melee, and this one's already over. So you can save that guy for next turn. Okay, going back to my orders, let's see if we can get this right. So the Eastern Skirmishers, these guys did not move and only fire during, so they have no fatigue. Heavy crossbow, charge with battle cry. So Back to fatigue rules here. They have made a charge and meleeed for 2 rounds. So they moved. Nope, they did not move prior to that, did they? I don't have a marker for anything prior to that. So they're not fatigued yet, but they're pretty dang close. So let's put a marker out here for charge. I think this purple one will do nicely for charge. Ah, I'm looking at the wrong thing. God bless. Okay, let's take this from the top. Those guys, no casualties. These arquebuses were to fire on the heavy foot, which they did. They had no fatigue and take no fatigue for that. However, they have meleeed for 2 rounds. So they will take 2 markers for melee. All right, moving down the line. These heavy footmen advanced half a move, so they do not incur additional fatigue, but they also do not clear their 3 fatigue that they have. The center skirmishers charged the arquebus to the southeast. They had no other fatigue, so they incur a marker for charge. I think we're using these purple ones for this. So they incur a charge. And then, oh no, purple one I'm doing for melee. Charge. Let's call charge blue. These guys did charge and 2 rounds of melee. So 1, 2. Interesting. Okay, keep going. Next, the armored foot advanced 6, which is their full movement, which means that they incur their 4th movement marker. The Eastern cannon fired. Eastern cannon fired. So they did not move, so their fatigue is cleared. They had 3, they're now back down to 0. The Western cannon were told to fire, but they couldn't. They also did not move, so they cleared their fatigue markers. Heavy horse and the other heavy horse both were at 1 fatigue, and because of their movement, they incur additional fatigue. So they're both at 2. So to recap, for the blue side, we've got 2, 2, 0, 4, 0, 3. 2 melee and a charge, nothing. Well, actually, they moved. I'm going to give them 1. I don't know. I think that snake did not move more than... Okay, those guys are going to stay unfatigued. These guys, 2 rounds of melee, which I missed somehow. And did they... They were right up against it, so that's not really a move. They did charge, however, so they do get a charge marker 2. So charge, and then you also see I've put a disorder kind of marker in the center here. I think we need to treat them as disordered. I'll talk about that in the chat. Okay, moving on. 2 rounds of melee because they stood fast, no fatigue at all. Moving to the other side, I hope it's simpler. Their cannons both moved. So both their cannons get additional fatigue. Their armored foot moved basically the entire move, so they're up to 2 as well. Their heavy horse definitely moved, taking them to 3 fatigue. This unit stood fast and reloaded, right? Yes. Stood fast and reloaded. Same thing for those arquebuses which are gone. So that's fine. That's so 0. I think it's 2, 2, 2, 3. And then these guys did a charge and 2 rounds of melee. So they did a charge charge. The hero did a charge. Both of them were involved in 2 rounds of melee. Good grief. It is a little bit more fiddly if we do it this way, guys. It's going to be more accurate, I think, but it's also a real pain in the butt. So these guys, I'll go back and check and see if they are totally fatigued or not. By the way, there is a gap here because that whole front rank was either eliminated or ran away. Here's where the routed man has gone to. So there's still a line of arquebuses there for next time. And again, these guys could not intervene. Thank you all for playing. And oh yeah, these guys, no excess casualties roll yet for the 2 that they lost and the 1 they gave up for prisoners. Okay, done.